You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 192. This episode is sponsored by the Tiki Bar T-Shirt Club, where their monthly T-shirt designs pay tribute to a Polynesian bar or restaurant from days long past. Each design is available for a limited time and will never be produced again. For the collectors out there, be sure to check out their subscription program, where they offer a discounted 3, 6, or 12-month plan, or you can always buy shirts one at a time. For more information and to check out this month's shirt, visit tikibartshirtclub.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by the Tiki Tea, a family-owned and operated tropical drink bar in Los Angeles, California. Come get their house specialty, the Ray's Mistake, for only $6 on Wednesdays until 9 p.m. For more information, check out their website, tiki-ti.com. If you have a product, service, or event that you'd like to bring attention to, we can help. This podcast reaches thousands of listeners in over 100 countries every week. Imagine hearing your ad in this spot, just like you're hearing this one right now. Sponsor an episode and get the exposure you deserve. For more information, go to desertoasisroom.com and click on Services. Today we chat with Alex Lamb and Max Well from Surf Monkey Films about their latest project, The Donn of Tiki, a documentary about the Godfather of Tiki, Donn Beach, also known as Don the Beachcomber. Learn about their backgrounds, how they decided to create a documentary about Donn Beach, what they've learned along the way, and what the future of their project holds. And, exclusive to this podcast, Alex and Max share an audio recording of Donn Beach himself. Hear him tell a funny story about one of his good friends, Marlene Dietrich. As always, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider helping us with your support during this challenging time. Stop by desertoasisroom.com to check out our merch or leave us a tip. We've got pendants, t-shirts, glassware, and more. And every purchase or donation, no matter the size, is very much appreciated and helps keep this podcast coming to you every week. Alrighty, grab a QB cooler and join us inside the Desert Oasis Room. And give it up for the crew from the Donn of Tiki, Alex Lamb and Max Well.
Inside the Desert Oasis Room.
Alrighty, we are back with another episode of Inside the Desert Oasis Room. Welcome back, and today we have special guests in the Desert Oasis Room, our friends from Surf Monkey Films, Alex Lamb, Max Well, and Taryn Rohraback, who's actually just going to be observing at this time, but we have her here enjoying some cocktails, and we have quite a bit of things to talk about. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
Oh, are we allowed to say we've been here before?
You are.
Okay. It's great to be back.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. I am speechless right now because I just saw I guess this is like the Kickstarter teaser video of what you guys are working on for the new documentary about Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gowne, a.k.a. Don the Beachcomber, a.k.a. Donn Beach, for a documentary called The Donn of Tiki.
Yes.
I am so excited by what I saw.
Good.
I am seriously blown away by what I saw. I don't even know where to start now. I'm still I'm reacting and I don't even know how to express into words how excited I am about the film and about what you guys are doing.
Well,
so,
thank you.
Thank you very
you.
much.
So it's funny you say thank you because I was going to start by thanking you guys for doing this. I know that you guys have been making films for quite a while. Surf Monkey Films has been around for how long? 10 years?
Around 10
10
years.
years maybe?
Yeah, that's, yeah. Yeah, Alex and I met actually in school around 2005 or so.
2005.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we've been working together, off and on for most of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So let's start with your bios, because obviously you're well versed in what you do. The production value for what you guys are doing for this Donn of Tiki documentary is off the charts. It's amazing. Let's start with your bios. How did Surf Monkey Films get its start? Was it when you guys met in school?
It was a few years after school. Let's see, I forget exactly why we started it. We were doing a bit of work together, and then people started paying us, and it was like, oh, we need to have a company, and a bank account, and a website.
I think it was mostly so we could have a bank account, because there was no way to, we needed to rent equipment and purchase things and sell things as a company.
Right.
I think that it was really just out of necessity. Is the only reason we made a company.
Somebody was like, "Who do we write the check to?" And we were like, "Give us just a minute." Although we should note that we're technically running this production through Beachcomber Productions.
Oh, okay.
Which is a side business that we created specifically for this doc.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
interesting.
Because it's a large project, and it's going to take some time, and just to keep. There's also a lot of financial stuff involved with raising the money and all of that. So to keep everything
it kind of insulated,
separate from Surf Monkey.
Yeah, makes it a little simpler that way.
I'm curious about other films that you've worked on in the past. Is there anything that you can talk about that maybe we might be familiar with, or what have you done before?
Sure. Let's see. Probably the things that people mostly would have seen would be the Jib Jab Storybots stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a Netflix show.
It's a kids show called Ask the Storybots, and it's made by an animation company called Jib Jab. They started out by doing all those animated dancing cards, and we used to do work for them as Surf Monkey for a long time, and then they started making this show, which is an animated show, but they would have live action celebrity guest stars on the show.
Okay.
So we've filmed a lot of episodes for them where we're essentially filming Weird Al Yankovic or Ed Norton or Snoop Dogg talking to nobody, talking to animated characters. So we'll shoot a scene where we're just filming whoever the celebrity is for that episode talking to a cop, and then the animators take it. And
they're like the MCU stuff where they're acting to a tennis ball.
Exactly,
That kind of stuff, right? Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of magic that happens behind the scenes in filmmaking. This particular project sounds like it's probably then a little bit different than what you're used to doing?
Well, yes and no.
Max has a lot of documentary.
Outside of some of the stuff that we've done together, I did a lot of work with another company for the last 15 years that produces primarily documentary content.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I did a lot of projects with the National Park Service, some state parks, museums, stuff like that. So my background really is in documentary, and I mostly do more commercial stuff now, but documentary is kind of my love.
Yeah, and kind of our trades, I mean, outside of Surf Monkey Films, when we're working on our own, is I'm in post-production, I'm an editor, and Max is a cinematographer, and this project is something that we both just wanted to create and direct and make it happen. So for a feature-length documentary like this is the first thing we've really ever done where we've been the directors.
Yeah, working on it together.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that respect, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So it's an interesting topic as well. Don the Beachcomber, Donn Beach, the Donn of Tiki. I want to start by asking you, who's the genius who thought of the name?
Alex was that genius.
Because that name, I got to tell you, man, it's super creative.
What's weird is I think we were having a meeting on the phone and we were like, what are we going to call this thing? We should call it something because we needed to create that LLC and stuff, and we were like, what are we going to call this movie? And then I didn't really think about it. I was just like, what if we just call it the Donn of Tiki? Because he's like,
He's
like
the Donn. He's the
Donn.
He's the
like
Godfather.
He's the Godfather.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning of Tiki, and his name is Donn.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Then,
it's the
yeah,
Donn.
and we were
of
like,
Tiki.
oh, wow.
A
And then, like, all of us
triple
kind of had this,
entendre.
like, inception moment where, like, oh, it just keeps going inside itself.
Well, that's the thing. Is that, and even when I realized that, I thought, holy moly, what a creative name.
Yeah.
Right? The Donn of Tiki being the beginning of Tiki, the Donn of Tiki being the Godfather of Tiki, the Donn of Tiki being the guy named Don
Yeah.
in this Tiki
And that actually,
subculture.
the spelling of it goes to Marie King, because I think we wanted to do D-O-N, because we were like, well, sometimes he spells his name D-O-N, and sometimes it's D-O-N-N.
Yeah.
And, but we were like, but Don, like Mafia Don, would be D-O-N.
Right.
So we're like, let's just do Donn of Tiki. And then she pointed out, she's like, well, his name really was D-O-N-N, though, even though it's Don. And then I think when we saw it written that way,
Yeah.
it just looked so much cooler,
It looked
because it's
better,
like, because
yeah.
then it really tells you, if you don't know anything about this guy, you're like, well, why is it spelled that way? And it's like the first of many things that doesn't make sense about Don.
Yeah.
Is that he spells
So
Don with two N's.
Two N's. Well, and then even the graphic that you guys are using as the logo for the documentary, even the font is very much period correct. It's of an Art Deco style,
Right.
And it's everything about it is just very it's super creative. So super cool. I was really like impressed by that. I'm curious how you guys were drawn to the Don the Beachcomber story, because when you first started posting all of this stuff, people were asking in the Tiki community, who are these guys and what do they know?
Yeah.
So how were you drawn to Don? What brought you to tell his story?
Well, let's see. So back in 2019, I guess we started talking about maybe doing a short docu-series highlighting some of the tiki spots in LA. We both,
We were interested in doing like historical tiki places
yeah.
in our area and just interviewing them.
Right, because we thought the history is cool, and just the vibe, the ambiance
Yeah.
is cool and appealing to us just visually.
And we just wanted to do it as like a YouTube kind of series,
Right.
And then the more people we talked to, everybody lit up when they talked about Don, and then they would start telling us these outrageous stories. Some of them, we had never heard before. Some of them we had, but it was always like everybody focused on Don, and we suddenly realized like this guy is the story. At least the story that we were drawn to, I think.
Yeah, multiple people said something along the lines of, "Oh, it all goes back to Donn Beach."
Right.
And we're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
that's the movie then.
Well, and the more that you learn about him, the more you realize like he was a storyteller. I think
Sure.
we're drawn to him as storytellers, and the fact that he's a storyteller, even with his own life, like he's telling stories, like deciphering what's accurate and what's just Don's stories is
Yeah.
kind of the biggest challenge of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him intriguing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And all the more it makes you think like, wow, who is this guy really? Like, we know what we think we know,
Right.
but then there's so much more to it.
And I think that was, I honestly do think, that's like our cute little ending to our pitch video, but I do think that was kind of his plan, was to always have it be kind of a mystery, because
Yeah.
that's much more interesting than real life a lot of the times. Although Don is like kind of a rare case, we've decided, where his real life might actually be interesting than all the stories he tells. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he certainly lived an extraordinary life by any standard. And it's funny, it's like you said, that's one of the intriguing things about him, is you go in and it's like there's all these incredible stories, and figuring out what's true and what isn't is half the battle,
Yeah.
and but some of the stuff, it's like he really kind of created a character. So there's Donn Beach, the person, Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant, born Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant, and then there's the Don the Beachcomber character that he created, but he also lived the life of a beachcomber. And
so how
it's-
different was the character from the real guy? Was it one and the same, or did he hang his hat at the end of the day and become Ernest Raymond Beauregard?
I think he really was the character that he created. I mean, there's some stuff that is embellished.
Sure.
And some stories he tells which maybe just didn't happen at all. But really, his life is not that far off from the character that he created.
Yeah. I kind of think of it as like a talk show host, like on like late night TV, or like a shock jock, like Howard Stern or something. Like, he is Don the Beachcomber, but when he's portraying himself as Don the Beachcomber, he's bumping everything up like another 10 or 20%.
Yeah.
But I think all of that is really inside of who he was as a person.
Okay. You guys are gathering a lot of information and a lot of footage I've never seen before, photos I've never seen before. And those things don't happen if this project doesn't happen. So you're recording a lot of things historically. What are the things that you've gathered so far, and maybe you didn't expect that you were going to gather things that maybe surprised you? And also, what are you learning along the way as you are uncovering these pieces of footage and making these interviews with the people who knew Don?
Well, first off, we have to say, we've had a huge helping hand from Tim Glasner, who is also writing a book about Don. And he has been doing research for years. And I think you'd have to ask Tim, but I kind of feel like when we first talked to Tim, he was kind of like, who are you guys and why are you doing this? Like, what? Because it was a little bit like we were stepping on his toes. I can't imagine that he didn't see it that way. But
it wasn't just Tim. I mean, I'm a longtime Tiki guy, and people all around me were asking the same questions, like, who are these guys? And what do they know? Because, again, now as you've learned, Don's story is so nuanced.
Right.
And people are protective about making sure the history is accurate, especially if this subculture that we're so passionate about.
Right.
Well,
there is some of the information in the film has been publicly available stuff for a while, right? Like some stuff that Jeff Barry dug up, and some stuff that Tim has in his book on the Maikai. And then there are a handful of other people who have kind of delved into this stuff, but there's some of that information is out in the public, some is not. We have had a lot of help from Tim, who's been doing research, and then the other source of information has been Phoebe, who was married to Don from the...
Phoebe was really the beginning for us. I think at that point we realized we're actually making a movie about Don. Once we got a hold of Phoebe in New Zealand, who's... I think she's been married 3 times. So Don was her first husband. Then she married Arnold Bittner, who wrote a book about Don.
They wrote a book,
as a gift for her, which is weird and crazy.
I was going to say that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
But essentially, so Phoebe had been saving all this stuff. Don had saved all this stuff, and he had always wanted to write a book about himself, but Phoebe says he couldn't do it because he wasn't that kind of person, which is really endearing, but also kind of hard to believe based on what we know about Don. And he'd love to tell stories about himself, but I guess just sitting down and writing the book of his life, he was just it's not that important, is what Phoebe said. He couldn't bring himself to write this book.
Yeah.
So Arnold Bittner kind of picked up all those notes and everything. And then when the first time we talked to Phoebe and her husband on the phone, she's like, well, there's this guy who's writing a book, Tim, and then she connected us to Tim.
Yep.
And then it was really about the information Tim had and then the information Phoebe was giving all of us. Because Phoebe really wanted this documentary to happen as well as Tim's book. And we've kind of just all been working together as a team. So Phoebe, all of this stuff that she's been saving of Donn's personal belongings, his journals, his photographs, everything that he's ever had in his life that he saved, she's been traveling around the world with it for everywhere she's lived.
She's just been carrying it. Yeah.
And she
a couple months ago, she just shipped everything to Tim.
So Tim has everything now.
And it's thousands of pages of documents, journal, like writing that Donn did. It's business plans, it's photographs, it's
blueprints.
Blueprints for some of his projects.
Like crates full of stuff.
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So Tim's basically been digitizing stuff for a couple of months.
I know. I wish we were closer, because we keep saying we wish we could help you, but we're so far away, and with the travel, that's why we're trying to raise money now, because we're finally at a place where we're allowed to travel again.
Right.
Because we haven't been able to. We've only been getting interviews locally to Southern California, because that's all that we've been able to do with the pandemic and everything.
Right.
There's so much great information, even from locally, that it seems like such a daunting task to sift and sort, manage, catalog all the stuff that you guys are capturing. I'm curious how you guys are managing all of that, and also if anything else has come up that where you've thought wow. So let me start by asking this. We'll do this in a couple parts. So let's say the first part, how are you managing all the data that you're getting now? And how are you going to break this all down into something that's like an hour, hour and a half, whatever the length of this documentary is? How are you going to choose what to include?
It is a challenge. It is, like you said, it's a ton of information, and it's also sort of a rabbit hole, right? Like we keep finding new stuff that we didn't expect to find.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So the way we're thinking of it is we're kind of breaking it down by chapters in Donn's life, right? So there's sort of his early life from, which is, there's still relatively little known from his birth up to the time where he opens his first place in Hollywood. And then there's this kind of window from 33 to 40 where that's the kind of the heyday of the original Donn's restaurant, and then the place across the street at 1727 instead of 22. So that's like 33 to 40. And then there's a little bit of World War II stuff in there as well. And then after that is kind of mostly, it's a lot of stuff in Hawaii and then some other projects that he had throughout the South Pacific. And there's a lot of stuff, really interesting stuff that Donn did later in life that a lot of people just don't know about or that doesn't get a lot of attention. And so there's some stuff he did in Hawaii, like he's really responsible for, in many ways, for the historical Lahaina district in Maui.
Yeah.
And he had a huge role in the international marketplace.
Yeah.
Basically created the international marketplace.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work he did there, and then he had some other just really interesting projects in Singapore and Hong Kong and Samoa and
floating gambling restaurants.
Yeah.
He was really into floating riverboats and putting them in exotic places.
Interesting.
Right. So to segue back to where we were, it's sort of like Donn's early life, the formation of Don's Beachcomber Cafe, and so on, and then World War II, and then we kind of get into his later life, and then the last third of the film is kind of his legacy. So it's where how the tiki scene sort of developed from Donn's early influence, and then where we are now.
Oh, I've got stuff to say about those two pieces that you just said there, that I really want to discuss with you guys because it's kind of a mind-blowing thing. But the second part of this question as well is, from all this discovery, this tiki subculture is so complex, and you start seeing things like, now you've got this tie-in with Trader Vic, that's part of Donn's story.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other subject matter there with him. And then Oceanic Arts, that's part of Donn's story. There's a whole subject matter there with them. And then you've got Tiki T and Ray Buin. That's part of Don's story, and there's a whole subject matter there with them. And as you can imagine, now we're at an intersection where we can go all of these different pathways to tell all of these other stories.
Yeah.
Has that given you guys any thought about other things that you can expound upon?
Well, ironically, we kind of shot what we originally intended to shoot, which was like these little documentaries about all these historic places. Like, it's like, oh, well, now in doing this big project, we kind of have all these tiny little documentaries in there. Like, we could have like a 20-minute documentary about Oceanic Arts or Tiki Tea or any of these places, and it really has, it's unfortunate because not everything can go in the movie.
Well, I guess what I'm leading to is that could this possibly lead you to other projects that are related?
Yeah,
right?
It is. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, and there may be, there's potentially a follow-up project because there is going to be so much information that probably won't be able to make the film just because we don't have enough time.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's potentially yes, but at this point, we're like so focused on this project.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But I'm also coming from, as a Tiki guy, a selfish perspective, right? I'd love to see a documentary on the Buins and the Tiki Tea and their whole, just starting with his story of immigrating from the Philippines and finding his way into Don's and the path that led him down.
Yeah.
And then Oceanic Arts, I'd love to see a story on those guys and their contribution to this whole Tiki subculture and how they influenced movie making and TV and hospitality and all of that stuff and everything that they built, even with theme parks and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a story there. And then, of course, Trader Vic's, who was a staunch competitor of Don's. And if we want to even go down that path, we can look at Stephen Crane, right, who was also in that category. So there's so much, and it's someone like me, I want to see all of it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a world where there could be like a Marvel Cinematic Universe of just like these Tiki guys.
Totally, right?
The ultimate crossover.
Totally.
Through time and space.
Yeah. Without giving anything away with what you've learned so far and things that you've found, what are some interesting things that you can share that you've learned about Donn or anything related to his story?
Let's see. Some things that we... It's tricky because there's some cool stuff that we know we want to save for the movie.
Right, without giving anything away. I also don't want to spoil it for you guys.
Right.
But
No.
Well, we could say, okay, so one thing that we have come up with that has been a great surprise is the audio recordings of this interview that Donn gave in 1987, a couple of years before he died. So we had seen a transcript of this interview, and we had found mention of the audio in a couple of places
the tapes
online.
It said on there, like tape 2 starts here, whatever, in the transcript. So like these tapes have to exist somewhere.
Yeah.
And we just started reaching out to people, and like the Wadamo Foundation, I don't think exists anymore, or we tried to figure out how to reach out to them, and then they led us to, was it the State University of Hawaii?
We should look this up because I think contractually we have to
say
mention them in a specific way. we'll look that up in just a second. But we actually were able to get permission to use the audio recordings in the film.
That's awesome.
And most of this stuff is nobody has ever heard before. So
that is awesome.
And the idea of having Donn tell his own story for part of the movie.
That is awesome.
We think is
really wanted
really cool.
him to be the narrator.
Oh my God.
We don't want to have...
Oh my God. That's mind-blowing. That he's going to narrate this documentary or even part of the documentary. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's really was the idea. And I think once I remember the day we got the email, and I didn't see the email. I just saw Max just texted me. He's like, look at your email. We got the tapes. And
Wow.
And I think at that point, we were like, oh, so this is actually happening. Because I think everything up until then was just us talking
It was an
about,
idea.
like, this would be really cool to do this.
Yeah.
But then once we got those tapes, it became more of like a responsibility. Like, well, no, now we went this deep.
Yeah,
we have to follow through with it.
now you have to do something with it. So here's what's interesting. You said earlier that Don didn't really want to tell his story, right?
Right.
That Phoebe was like, yeah, well, he didn't really want to tell his story, but now he's going to be narrating his own story. He's going to be narrating a story told about him.
It's kind of ironic in a way.
Right?
Yeah, and I don't want to make it seem like Don didn't want his story told.
It just
so
wasn't.
Much as it was.
It
like,
just wasn't as important to him.
Exactly.
To tell the story.
Yeah, it's like to sit down and write a book. Like clearly he did this interview. He seemed to. And we'll play a piece of the interview, but like he seemed to relish in telling these stories of his life.
He's an incredible storyteller.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think, and what Phoebe told us about him writing the book thing is that deep down he's really kind of a humble guy, and it just like didn't feel right that he's, essentially bragging about
himself.
His life.
Yeah. And I suppose that's what I mean, and that's what you guys mean. But I just find it ironic that now he's not only going to tell the story of his life, but he's going to tell it in a documentary about his life while film and photos play in the background.
Yeah. And, people who are alive today, years after his death, who are all still affected and carrying on sort of this legacy of who he was and what he started.
Yeah.
So here's a recording. This is a recording of Don talking about his bar in the 30s. And it's him telling a story about a night that Marlene Dietrich came into the bar. And, just this funny, embarrassing story that he has to tell.
Okay.
So these tapes, so just so we give them due credit, these were recorded by Alice Sineski. She's the one interviewing Don. This was in 1986, so it was only a few years before he died.
86, okay.
And it was for the Wadamul Foundation Oral History Project, which is now basically that is all being kept by the Hawaiian and Pacific Collections, University of Hawaii at Manoa Library.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. So that they gave us permission to use this in the documentary, permission to play it and everything, and we just wanted to give them credit for doing that because,
Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah, let's play this.
We had people like Chaplin and Marlene Dietrich. She was a great delight. I think I have to tell you this because it's a little risque, but it gives you insight on those days. She had just finished this picture called The Blue Angel, I think it was, and she liked this drink that I made. It was called the Gold Cup. It was a lovely rum cocktail, and it was a favorite. One of her entourage called me in the afternoon. He says, Marlena is coming after the theater, after the opening. It was a premiere at the Grum's Chinese Theater, and she would like to have about possibly 12 people. Now, you could only get 30 people in there on each other's shoulders, I said, Marlena, we don't, you tell her that she knows that I don't reserve any tables because it's none to. Well, he says, do the best you can. And she arrived about 11 o'clock with 14 people. And there was people standing at the bar, and over here there were 3 little tables, and people with their backs to the with the wall there, and you had to walk past that to get out the door or in the door. And they traipsed in, and she came through in a gold lame gown, beautiful gown. And she had a lovely figure, And there was no place to sit. And they all sort of behind the bar, the people sitting at the bar. And I made a drink for her, her favorite, the Gold Cup. And she was standing up, and just as she started to pick it, I made it and I handed it to her. Just as she started to pick it up, someone bumped her, unintentionally, of course. And it fell right down her bosom. Ice, and it was an iced drink, you see. In this little room, the bar, there was no toilet in there. They had to go through the lobby and out through the hall to find this little, there wasn't a proper ladies' lounge. It was a toilet. You opened the door and you sat down. You know what I mean? Anyway, I grabbed some towels and rushed around the bar and grabbed her by the arm and I took her out. And I found this door and opened it. And there was nothing. She had to turn around and sit down, you see. And I started to close the door, and I was shoving the towels into her. And she said, "For Christ's sake, come and help me. I can't get this gown off, you know." And she was sitting, and the stress was holding, and it was wet. Here, she wanted me to take her gown down and to dry her off. Well, I'm standing there like an idiot, and the door was open because I couldn't get two people in there, you know. And she's sitting down, and I'm standing in front of her and mopping her, you see. And I pulled her lovely gown down, finally got it off of her shoulders, and I was doing this, you see. And she tells the story on me because the look on my face, of course, at that time, and here I am doing that, you see. She was a great delight.
Wow. That is so cool. So I have so many things to say. So many things to say. Let me start by saying he had an unusual way of speaking.
Yes.
I'm trying to nail down what kind of accent. In some ways it sounded English. Mm-hmm. In some ways it sounded like the old American style of talking at the turn of the century. And you can hear the grizzle in his voice, that he was a man of experience and wisdom and adventure.
And cigars.
But how great is that? He had Marlene Dietrich asking him to take her gown off. And
I love when he tells the story and he's like, it's spilled on her bosom.
Right.
And then he pauses, he's like, it was an iced drink.
Right, it was an iced drink, yeah.
to make sure you understand the point.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let me start by saying thank you for sharing that with us, because that is a huge treat. I don't think anybody's heard that outside of you guys.
Possibly not, yeah. Or at least very few people.
Very few.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting thing, and this is the privilege and the dilemma of working with this material, right? So Donn mentions the premiere of The Blue Angel, I think is the film he references, which came out in 1930. So the timeline doesn't quite match up, right? Because this, we think, would have been between 33 and 37. Mm-hmm. And now you can chalk that up to, that's just a movie that she was really well known for, and he's recalling something that happened 50 years ago.
Yeah. It could mean a couple things. I mean, when was this? Do you know the recording date?
So this was 80. I guess it was 86 when they actually did the recording.
How old was he at that time?
So he was 79, I think, at that point.
So he could also just be... Yep. He's an old guy trying to recall a date, and so maybe he just doesn't have it right in his head.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away anything from the story, but it just means that as we go through all of this stuff, it's like we kind of have to not fact check it, but we have to...
No, I know exactly what you're saying, is that you have to think about how accurate is the content, right? Not that it's, like you said, that the story is not legitimate or anything, but like the date of 1930, just now that throws it off. Mm-hmm.
Right. So. Yeah, and there are little things like that, and it doesn't really give us any reason to doubt the veracity of the story.
Sure.
Like there are photos of her at that time, in that time period.
She also sent him a photo
there
when he was in the war, like an autographed photo.
So we're pretty certain that it happened.
Yes,
we know that it's not something that he's making up.
Right.
It's just collecting all the details and trying to figure out, we have a responsibility to try to tell this as accurately as possible.
Of course,
and
of course.
Don doesn't make that easy all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So his accent. One of Don's nephews told us that he thinks he got the accent from when he was in the war, and he was overseas, and he was entertaining people like Churchill. But then Phoebe told us that was an accent that he kind of put on whenever there was a microphone in front of him.
It was his showman voice.
It was a showman voice, and at the beginning of the tapes, you actually hear the woman interviewing him ask, like, she's like, I think you can just use your regular voice. And so, like, they clearly had a discussion about it before they started recording. He was like, how do you want me to talk?
Wow. When I watched the Kickstarter video, I was intrigued also by what I heard there, because there was a little bit of the transatlantic voice happening, which was something that happened in the early 20th century, right, where all the broadcasters talked a little bit like this.
Right.
So it was, it's obviously not the way that he naturally talked after hearing this.
Right.
So interesting. Wow. There's so many things that come to mind when I think about Don the Beachcomber and his little cafe. I was at Tiki Oasis in Arizona last weekend, and we discussed this on the podcast we recorded there, as a matter of fact. And you and I have discussed this before, Alex. If not for Don the Beachcomber, we would all not be sitting here right now.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought, because, this is a guy that, as eccentric as he was, when he opened the Beachcomber Cafe, he was still a young guy in his 20s. And, he just opened a restaurant. He wasn't somebody who cured cancer or ended slavery or invented the automobile. He just opened like this little corner cafe in a hotel lobby, and 100 years later, all of our lives have been affected by a guy who just opened a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about this whole path of where we are today, there would be no Trader Vic's without Don's. There would be no Steve Crane. There would be no Tiki era, Polynesian pop era. There would be no Resurgence. There would be no Jeff Berry. There would be no Sven Kirsten, Otto von Stroheim, or anything that is related to what is happening today. It's kind of a mind-blowing thing. Have you guys ever thought about that?
I guess not in that way necessarily, but I guess if you do kind of go all the way back, it's like, he spawned, competitors and imitators, and all of that kind of turned into what we
it's
now
so crazy
know. So yeah,
I think about like my favorite bar, the Tiki Tea, which would not exist without Don the Beachcomber, because there would be no Ray Buin, right? Ray wouldn't have, he wouldn't have had the Don the Beachcomber to work at in the first place. And if Don didn't do what he did, if he, say he opened this cafe and he didn't do that Beachcomber style and he just did it as a French cafe, or, something that is just kind of just middle of the road, right? Like how different history would be.
Yeah, and I wonder, I have thought about that sometimes, like what if he did something different? Because Don was a guy, he didn't have a ton of resources, right? He wasn't like, he didn't go to Oxford for his education or something.
Sure.
He was just this amazingly charismatic person who had traveled around the world and collected some weird stuff and could really just endear himself to almost anybody he talked to. So I think he would have been pretty successful in anything that he did.
Yeah, and I think his biggest influence really is, because Tiki, like the Tiki culture and pop Polynesian culture that came about, I feel like that's really, it starts back at Donn's, but it's also kind of like a chain reaction of what Donn started. Like Donn was the first domino that fell, but like, you know, like Sven will say, like, it wasn't a tiki bar, it was a beachcomber bar. It was a beachcomber bar, yeah. And it's like that, you know, it was kind of just this perfect storm of like everything in Donn's life led up to him opening this bar.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but it's like he had the unique experience of, you know, traveling to Jamaica as a child, and then as like an early adult, what today we would consider a child still, you know, like in his early 20s, traveling around the world in the South Seas and learning how to make these cocktails, then coming back during Prohibition when everybody is drinking, you know, he refers to it as bathtub gin.
Sure.
He didn't really learn the cocktails from his travels. He came up with the cocktails.
Well, but he learned the daiquiri, and he learned
some of the Caribbean stuff. Sure.
And the Planter's Punch.
Yeah.
And he learned those cocktails, but then what he did is when he came here, and it's like, well, once Prohibition ended and nobody wanted rum, they just wanted their alcohol back. They wanted their whiskey that they liked, or their gin. Right. Now rum was cheap.
Right.
And he had access to it. And he uniquely knew how to make some drinks, but then he started changing it and adding to it and creating these drinks that had, you know, 16 ingredients in them. And that today is still the same. Like like you still go to a tiki bar and there will be 16 ingredients in your cocktail. And that's really, I think, his biggest thing that he did, like
his influence.
His biggest influence, I think, is that kind of he changed the American cocktail.
Yeah, but again, also if he didn't open this Beachcomber Cafe, we would have never learned about him. Because if he was doing that, if he was doing that in his own home bar or his kitchen, it's not something that would have become this prolific thing that Trader Vic's tried to reverse engineer. And then, you know, I mean, like it's that whole, you drop the pebble and you got that whole ripple.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting thought. I'm curious what kind of feedback you're getting from the community so far.
Well, so far, everyone has been just really supportive.
Been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, people are interested in what we're doing and they want to see how they can help. And yeah, we're getting a lot of love from everybody.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because I think like you said in the beginning, like, who are these guys and what do they know? And the answer really is nobody and not much. When we started this project, we were nobody and we didn't know much, but we really we were drawn to Donn and we wanted to tell this story. And now, you know, we've collected this stuff that we don't think anybody else has. And we have the ability to tell the story. Why shouldn't we do it?
You guys have very much become an authority on his story and his background. And as a matter of fact, when people ask me that question, I tell them like what I know. I give you guys all the credibility you deserve because, you know, and I've told you this before where I've said, oh yeah, they've corrected me and I'm a longtime tiki guy. Like I think I know everything about Donn, but I clearly don't. And so
I think that's also because we were nervous before we interviewed you. We were doing a lot of research before we came to interview. Yeah, so like really what it was just a matter of me studying a little more than you the night before.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it worked though. But it worked. So what's the next step? Where do you guys go from where you are today?
Sure. So we've been at this how long? Almost a year, around a year at this point. And a lot of that has been research and kind of building up these connections.
We started this before the lockdown.
Yeah,
so
I
we
guess
started
you're
talking
right.
to people. So
You're
I guess
right.
it's been
so
more
it's
than
been
a year
and a half, roughly.
Wow.
So at this point, we've interviewed a lot of people in the LA area, greater Los Angeles area primarily. The next step is there's a bunch of other people we need to talk to, but they're on the road. So traveling and then And then there's a ton of other stuff that comes after that. There's a lot of post-production work and going through all the images and all of that stuff. But the next big step is the traveling things. And so that means, we're going to interview Jeff Berry, and we're going to go talk to Tim, and there's a list of probably another dozen to 15 to 20 people, depending on how many people we actually include.
Yeah, and how much we can raise. But, it's all kind of like, it's all dependent on what we're able to make happen,
Right. Funding and all that kind of stuff. So I think you guys have a Kickstarter that you're going to be putting up.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Kickstarter, and let's express to our audience that wants to help how they can help. And because we at the Desert Oasis Room want to do our part to making sure that you guys get to finish this project the way that you deem it should be done. And so how can we help you do that?
Thank you. So we are launching a Kickstarter sometime soon. I don't know exactly when this will air, but we'll say sometime soon.
Okay.
And there's going to be some cool backer rewards on it. We're working with this guy named Shag that you may have
might have heard of that guy.
Josh he is part of the project, and he has, he was kind of one of the guys early in the Tiki scene, the revival that was important. And he has created a Donn mug. So that's going to be one of the backer rewards. There's some pins that we're going to have on there inspired by some of the early Donn's menus.
Tiki Masterclass, Tiki Cocktail Masterclass with guest professor Adrian.
I didn't know I was doing. I'll
You've
do
already
it.
done it.
I'll do it.
Shot it.
Okay. Oh, we did?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah. After your interview, you showed us how to make a what drink did we make?
I forgot.
We did the Sumatra Kula.
Sumatra Kula. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't call that a master class, but
for the purposes of our Kickstarter,
but if you guys want to watch me make a Sumatra Kula.
Yes. Well, we also have Mike Buin and
Marie King.
King.
Yeah, we have a lot of good bartenders.
Yes.
Showing how to make lots of Donn's cocktails. So that's kind of a cool reward, I think.
I love it.
Even if it's just for the the fun of it, I feel like it's everybody can make these drinks at home, but to see how Marie King makes
your
this,
favorite bartender
exactly. Yeah. It's like it's fun.
Yeah, so we've got that, and then of course you can contribute a little bit of money and make sure you get to see the film as soon as it's done. There's another level, which is a special thank you in the credits for people who want to be involved and might want to see your name on the screen.
Yeah.
Here's a top secret thing, which I think we can share for the first time. Actually, you're probably the first person to hear about this.
Okay.
So
I might be the first one to hear about this. I thought we said everything.
I hope not. No. There's some of these interesting Donn stories we're going to tell through animation. So we're working with an animator to come up with some visuals to go along with some of these things, and we're creating a tier in the Kickstarter for people who might want to be
sitting at Donn's bar
in the animation, sitting at
an animated extra.
Oh my God!
So
I might have to break out a credit card to be at Donn's bar.
Yeah.
I do have a question that I ask a lot of people. If you could travel anywhere in time, when would you go?
Yeah.
I often say that I'd love to be sitting at the bar when the Ray's Mistake was created.
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool. But I have also said in the past that I would love to be at Don's Beachcomber Cafe on opening day.
I kind of would like to go back to the year before, maybe 1932, and see if it was open. See if it was a speakeasy.
See if it was a speakeasy.
Because that's kind of one of the biggest things that we're trying to verify. It's when did Donn's really open?
I love it.
Because it's very unlikely that it opened the day Prohibition ended.
He just opened the door on repeal day.
Yeah.
But it was already there.
I would
Right.
like to go back to the day the zombie was invented, because there's
so many stories
a
about that.
few
Yeah.
stories, and learning which of those, if any, is true would be pretty
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Right.
We've got a good one in the film. There's a
Yeah.
good story
That's
in the film
awesome.
that I don't think is a story anybody has heard yet.
Yeah.
At least we have not seen anything about it before. So
Right.
that's kind of something exciting, is we think we know the true story of how the zombie was created.
We may have it in the movie, but
love
even then, there's some questions.
I love it. Well, I am going to time this recording, so by the time you guys are hearing this, you can look at the description below for the link
Yeah,
to
and if you
the
go to-
Kickstarter.
Oh, cool. Great.
TheDonnofTiki.com. Remember, there's
The Donn
two
of
N's
Tiki?
in Donn.
Okay.
So TheDonnofTiki.com. That should also, hopefully, at this point, take you to our Kickstarter.
Yes.
There you go. There we go. And then let's also throw out the social medias if anybody wants to follow you guys on social media.
The Donn of Tiki at everything. So
Okay, at
Instagram,
the Donn of Tiki.
Twitter.
Yeah.
The Donn of Tiki.
Two N's. Two N's and Donn.
Two N's and Donn.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, we here at the Desert Oasis Room are committed to helping you see this project to fruition. So whatever we can do, you let me know. And I'm happy to accommodate you in any way that I can.
Well, you've
even
been
if
a
it
huge
means
help to us already throughout the.
Well, of course, I'm a Tiki guy and I'm a friend of you guys, so it's my honor. And I'm going to throw this out here, and I'm putting this out to the public, so this is real. If you want to include something in one of your tiers to have a private party here at the Desert Oasis Room to help raise money, then the Desert Oasis Room is yours.
Wow,
So
that'd be pretty cool.
That is a cool. Well, yeah. Okay, so the Kickstarter has not been finalized yet.
so I'm just throwing that out there. So anyway, please follow our friends at the Donn of Tiki, thedonnoftiki.com. The link for the Kickstarter will be in the description. And thanks again for joining us on the podcast, guys.
Thank you so much for
Appreciate it.
having us.
Can I say one more
Yeah.
thing about
Yes.
the Kickstarter? I
Yes.
hate to chime in at the end. There's some cool swag and stuff, but we really are hoping that people just are interested and want to support the project. So even if you don't want to give us money, come check it out and follow and see what's going
Share.
on.
Yeah.
Share
Yeah.
with your friends. Like it really is sort of a community effort.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and if and all our listeners out there, if you're not in a position to help or anything like that financially, it helps to just share the link.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So throw the link up there, and we will give you 1,000 thank yous for that.
That's right.
And if there's anybody out there who has information about Donn that you think nobody else knows, please email us.
Yeah.
Info at thedonnoftiki.com.
Yes.
We would love to talk to you because, like Max said, it's a community effort. And,
Very cool.
Anybody, it's all about collecting these stories and figuring out what's real and what's not.
Do we know a projected finish release or anything like that yet?
We're hoping to have a cut done next year.
Okay.
As far as release, it all just kind of depends on what we're able to do. We should have something like a cut done that is showable to people, hopefully sometime next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It's kind of a weird project because the scope of it has changed as we've gotten
Of course.
deeper into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But we are making some good progress, and the Kickstarter is a huge help because if we can raise the funds to get the traveling done, that's a huge
Perfect.
chunk of it
Yeah,
also.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up for our listeners. If you would like to see us make a drink from Don the Beachcomber's archives, I think we're going to try to do the whole QB Cooler Mai Tai thing.
Yeah, we're going to compare and contrast. And
So by the time we release this, I hope that I also have the video up on our YouTube. We're going to put the link for that in the description below as well. If it's not there, just go to the YouTube, youtube.com/Polynesian Pop. We'll have it up there soon. You can subscribe so that you don't miss it. But in the meantime, we're going to do the video next. And if you guys want to follow Archive and hear any of the other stuff that we've done in the past, go to our archive at desertoasisroom.com. You can get new episodes there. You can send me an email, talk me into doing a podcast with you too if you want.
Yeah.
And make sure you follow our friends at the Donn of Tiki. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much,
Adrian. This is great.
You're welcome. Alrighty, cheers everybody.
Bye.